Let's get into it.
Actually banned from the court. You talked about Mia, so alleged victim number 4 here, testified under a pseudonym. This was a former assistant of Combs, claims that she was physically abused by Combs, that she was forced to work these long, crazy hours, but also that she was sexually assaulted by Sean Combs. So a very sensitive, important witness. Her identity remaining anonymous was important in this case. But my understanding is somebody was banned from court today who may have violated that, right?
Vago. La IA está creando una generación de vagos. Así de claro te lo digo. Con ChatGPT ya nadie quiere...
Yeah, that is something that happened, I believe, yesterday. And the government did bring this to the judge this morning, where they were talking about how some of the attorneys were walking outside, kind of in the square area where a lot of us kind of go. We turn our phones back on after not having them all day. And somebody who was sitting, I believe, on the press side yesterday was live streaming during this, or making some type of video where instead of referring to Mia as Mia, that is her pseudonym that was assigned by this court order, instead Mia was referred to by her real name. And so what ended up happening is the judge and pretty much the courthouse ruled that this person cannot go back into the courthouse, can't go back into the courtroom. And so we didn't see this person this morning, this individual that they were talking about, nor do I know this individual's name, but I know of this person. And so from what the government's perspective was, that they really just wanted the judge to kind of do something, knowing that we have another person who's testifying under a pseudonym as early as maybe tomorrow or even on Thursday.
The thing is that Mia worked for Diddy for a while. Mia was one of Cassie's BFF, they call it, or I don't even know what BFF means, but besties or whatever. She was the one that said that they went to a Prince party, and that Prince security were the only ones that intervened when Cassie was getting beat down by Diddy because she was at the party. So there's pictures of Mia, whatever her name is, with Cassie, maybe even with Diddy. Remember, we got pictures of Karan, Christina Karan, all over. When everything happened, and you seen Diddy all worried in that Opa Loca airport in Miami, then you seen pictures of Diddy sitting with Karan poolside. She got like a bathrobe on, and Diddy got the same clothes that he had when he was, walking up and down in front of that airport the day of the raids. So a lot of people know who she is. I don't know who she is, but people just went into Revolt Films, TV, or whatever, and looked up, the staff name, and she came up. But this person eventually was doing a live or whatever, like Myrna says, and mentioned her name instead of saying, Mia. Big mistake. Now, they can't go back into court and report like this girl's doing.
Thursday, and that person obviously being Jane. And so from the government's perspective, it wasn't just that one instance of the person who was doing the live stream or doing the video saying Mia's real name. They also got another alert that somebody on Twitter or X also revealed Mia's true name after one of the exhibits by the defense was leaked or released. And so instead of redacting her photo or redacting her image, this Twitter post or X post just went up using Mia's real name. And so what the government did ask the judge is if they could find some type of way to order that this post be taken down. Not sure just the judge's kind of full extent as far as ordering this specific Twitter account. Not sure what this Twitter account's name is or anything like that, whether or not the judge can step in. But as far as Jane is concerned, they are...
Can a federal judge ask Twitter to take down a post? I don't know. I'm asking y'all, let me know in the comments.
making some different changes that are different from how Mia was testifying, where they're not going to be showing the exhibits to the public. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be seeing them on the screen whenever she does take the stand. However, the government did assure that the public would be getting the redacted exhibits of Jane's text messages, images that they are allowed to show that aren't sensitive in nature, but they just won't be coming whenever we see her testify later this week.
I'm not surprised by that. I've always been the point. I'm a member of the media. I don't think, even though there's an evidentiary value about what's going on those tapes and whether or not Sean Combs can be heard on those tapes, you know, coercing her into certain acts, I think the risk of everyone else seeing it outweighs the benefit, even from a reporting point of view, but clearly important for the jury to see it. Okay, now we got to talk about Eddie Garcia. Okay, so Eddie Garcia came up yesterday first. So he wanted to invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. He was actually granted immunity to testify. This former security officer at the LA Intercontinental Hotel back in 2016. I'll tell you what, seems like it made sense that he wanted some sort of protection because he admitted to quite a lot. He helped support the bribery allegation, one of the underlying crimes of racketeering that the prosecution is hoping to prove, right? Because what did he say about that day in March of 2016? What did he see, and who was he contacted by?
Yeah, well, according to Eddie Garcia, when he was on the stand, it seemed like he was really kind of involved in a lot. So we meet Eddie on the stand yesterday, but then he took the stand again this morning. He was questioned by Mitzi Steiner. So what we know about him is...
You could tell Eddie gangster. He all chubby and shit, but you could tell homie probably had that job at the Intercontinental and probably had a side hustle in a corner somewhere in LA. Oh, man.
Is that he's 33 years old and has been working in private security for about 13 years. However, in 2016, specifically on March 5th of 2016, which we all know now if we've been following this case, which we sure have, this was the day of the Intercontinental Hotel incident between Diddy and Cassie, where Cassie was allegedly leaving a freak off and then Diddy had attacked her, something that we all have seen at this point, the surveillance video. And so Eddie was talking about how on that day he was notified about an incident, the specific incident being a domestic dispute, and then he points out that this involves Sean Combs and Cassandra Ventura, points out Diddy in court, that type of thing. And so he said that he understood that under this immunity deal he had to be truthful in his testimony, but he was talking about how even during this incident he was just 24 years old and had only been working on the job just for a couple of months before this incident occurred. And so then he kind of discusses who his higher-ups are, or who his supervisors are, that being Bill Medrano, Director of Security, and Officer Israel Flores, the Assistant Director of Security. And one thing that Eddie Garcia said during his testimony that I thought was pretty interesting is that he's actually friends with Officer Israel Flores, even to this day. He said he saw him a couple weeks ago. They didn't...
Remember, Israel Flores was the one that recorded with his cell phone, supposedly for his wife. And that's the video that CNN got from Flores, who's a LAPD now.
Discuss his testimony, but he did say he saw a little bit of testimony on TikTok, and so that was kind of an interesting point. But then we get into the exhibits, and so what do we see from these exhibits? We see an employee sign-in register sheet, which kind of showed the hours that Eddie was working on the day of this incident. So he checked in around 2 p.m., and then he's supposed to leave his job at 10 p.m. every day during that time period. But however, on March 5th, kind of trickling into March 6th, he didn't get off until 1:30 in that morning, or 1:30 that following morning. And so he said he was shown surveillance video of this incident, and Eddie Garcia said that he could monitor the cameras at the security base, but he could see more than one camera at a time. But again, these cameras are motion censored, so he doesn't capture every single thing at every single moment, and plus there's a lot of cameras from his description of it. So then we see an exhibit, and this being the exhibit of the surveillance video from the incident. We can see Cassie in kind of that elevator bank or elevator lobby, if you call it that, and then we see kind of the point to where Cassie's kind of in her purse and trying to grab, I think, shoes or something out of her bag, and then you see Diddy come up, he hits her, he kicks her, she's on the ground. So it's something that we all have seen. It's nothing new to the jury, but Eddie Garcia was saying that at first during this incident, he didn't even recognize Diddy or Cassie, but he later learned it was the two that were involved in this, what was labeled as a domestic dispute. And so he said when he arrived at work, law enforcement wasn't contacted after this incident. And Eddie Garcia had said that it was because Cassie said that she didn't want police to be involved and that she didn't want medical attention. And so he had reviewed the incident report when he had arrived to work. And so then we see the incident report in an exhibit, and that again being from March 5th of 2016, where there were attachments to this report, including even video. And so Eddie explained that he got...
That's interesting that Cassie didn't want to get medical attention and that she didn't want the police involved. So even though she ran out of the room during a freak-off, I don't know what happened, she was still protecting. And this is what the defense is trying to say, you know, that she was a willing participant. I don't know what came about, why she ran out, why Diddy ran out after her, and, you know, this happened. But that's pretty interesting that she requested no police involvement. Whoa.
A call during his shift, about an hour or an hour and a half into his shift, but it was a call that didn't appear local, nor did he necessarily recognize this number, but it was an interesting person who had called him, and that person was none other than Christina Coram, who was Diddy's kind of right-hand gal.
Christina seems to me like Sammy the Bull was to John Gotti.
She was kind of, in a way, not just a fixer, but also his like executive assistant and somebody.
You heard that? A fixer.
Who we, even at Law and Crime, know very well, it seems like, just from everything that has to do with Christina Coram. And so Christina had asked about this incident to Eddie and had even requested a copy of the video or just see the video so she could understand kind of what everything was going on with it. And so Eddie had said that Christina said that Diddy was intoxicated during this incident and that he didn't remember. And so there was an objection from the defense. That objection was sustained. There was a big sidebar, and then, not sidebar by Jesse Rubber, but there was a big sidebar, and then they kind of came back and started asking more questions, the prosecution was. And so Eddie had told Christina Coram that she needed to reach out to management. Then an hour or an hour and a half later, Christina shows up to the hotel, and she showed up to the hotel lobby asking about this video. And so Christina said that she was unaware of what happened on the video, but that she wanted to talk to hotel management. And Eddie Garcia kind of, I guess, tried to help navigate her into what she could do next, but kind of told her off the record, but on the record while he was testifying, that this incident was pretty bad. And so Christina called later again after leaving the hotel and passed the phone along to who else? None other than Diddy himself. And so Diddy had a chance to speak to Eddie Garcia, and Diddy said something along the lines of, "Do you know who I am?" And Eddie Garcia was like, you know, he recognized the voice. He knew it was Sean Combs, aka Diddy. And so Eddie was explaining that Diddy sounded nervous on this call and was talking super fast, kind of how I always talk, and that Diddy was saying that he had too much to drink and said something along the lines of, "You know how women are. If this video gets out, this could ruin me." That was kind of the gist of the call. And so Eddie was explaining that Diddy was stuttering through this, but had requested the video, and Eddie had told him that he needs a subpoena to get this video. And so then Eddie Garcia sends an email to his higher-ups just about Diddy calling, requesting this video. And so we see an exhibit of Eddie mentioning this to his bosses. And so it says, "Mr. Combs, who is staying in room 602, requested to have a sit-down meeting with you in regards to the incident." And then I'm paraphrasing here. Mr. Combs mentioned that he has a lawyer who had notified him that there was a thumb drive and was really concerned. And so at the bottom of this email, then we see kind of a link or just a contact information for Christina Coram. And so Christina then contacted Eddie multiple times after this. Even when Eddie was at home, she somehow got his personal number, and Eddie was saying that he didn't even provide his number to Christina or even Diddy. And so he said he was nervous and scared about why he was getting calls to his personal line and how...
That's gangster. They got his personal cell phone number. That's gangster. Christina ain't no... the fixer.
To even obtain his personal number, but Christina said that she would introduce herself again and gave the phone to Diddy, and Diddy had told Eddie Garcia that Eddie sounded like a good guy and that the footage could ruin Diddy, and that he wanted Eddie to do something about this video. And so Eddie was explaining that he didn't have access to provide the video. He didn't have the credentials to get the video from the server, something that Officer Israel Flores had testified to, because he was one of the first witnesses called, that really the only people who could grab the video, obtain the video, was the director of security. And so that was Bill Medrano. And so Bill did have access to the server, and Diddy had offered to take care of Eddie Garcia and whatever he needed. And what did Eddie think that this taking care of meant? Well, he thought it meant financially. And so Eddie Garcia then went back to work. He reached out to Bill Medrano, who again is his supervisor, the director of security, and Bill said that he would do it. He would get the video for Diddy, but he would do it for a price. And that price was $50,000. And so
that's gangster.
Eddie had called Christina Coram back and Christina gave the phone to Diddy. And Diddy sounded super excited, according to Eddie, and referred to Eddie as Eddie, my angel. I knew you could help. I knew you could do it. And this is Diddy talking to Eddie at this point. And then Eddie had told Bill, after he got off the phone with Diddy, that everything was a go and that Diddy wanted this particular video ASAP. And so Bill Medrano showed up to work the next day. He went up to the server room. He pulled the video and just put it on a thumb drive, and then the thumb drive was then given to Eddie. And so then Eddie told Christina Coram and Diddy that he had the thumb drive of the video. Diddy responded that he was happy and excited about this, and Diddy gave Eddie an address to meet with him ASAP because he wanted this video now. And so what we see is kind of Eddie's timesheet from the day when he goes into work, leaves work, that type of thing. But on this particular day, when Eddie was turning over this video to Diddy, it's now March 7th, but it shows that Eddie had been working that day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. However, he being Eddie, said that while he was on the stand, that Bill said that if anyone were to ask where he was when he wasn't at the hotel, just to say that he was running errands. And in a way, he was kind of running errands. That errand was to meet Diddy to exchange this video in exchange for money. And so Eddie had explained that he had arrived to a high-rise building. He called Christina Coram's number. Then somebody from security came down. Eddie said he can't remember the name, so we don't know who this particular security guard was, but Eddie was saying that this security guard was telling Eddie that he did a good thing. And so when Eddie arrived, it was Diddy, Christina Coram, and then this unnamed bodyguard. And that Diddy seemed super happy and excited just about obtaining this video. Diddy asked Eddie if he had it being the drive, and Eddie just handed it over. So then Diddy left the room, but then when he returned, Diddy was asking whether or not this was the one and only copy. Are there other copies? Are there other duplicates out there? And that he didn't want this video to get out. He was even asked if there's anything stored on the cloud or any backups of this video. And so then Eddie just makes sure with Bill that this is the one and only copy, and Bill told Eddie it was the one and only copy. And so Eddie said that Diddy said it wasn't just him that was concerned about this video getting out, but that Cassie was concerned about this video getting out, and whether or not Cassie might possibly make a police report. This was Eddie's concern to Diddy, and Diddy told Eddie that Cassie knew about this and she wanted this video pulled too. So then Diddy FaceTimes Cassie. Cassie was wearing a hoodie, we presume, possibly to cover up her injuries, that type of thing. But it's not like we saw any exhibit photos of what she looked like after the fact, beyond what she had testified to when she was testifying. But Eddie had explained that Diddy directed Cassie to tell Eddie that she wanted this video gone too, and that Cassie herself said that she had a movie coming out and she wanted this video to go away. And so
that I didn't know. That part I didn't know.
That was kind of the gist of what had happened before the video was turned over. There was a lot that even happened after the video was turned over.
And look, I think that point could be helpful for both the prosecution and the defense. Well, you know, for the prosecution point of view, you have Combs, again, directing Cassie to say this, right? Or the defense could say, hey, listen, this wasn't about a criminal trying to conceal evidence of a crime. He was trying to make sure evidence didn't come out, or make sure a video didn't come out that could embarrass him and Cassie. He was trying to protect both of them. So it'll be up to the jury which way to view that, although, you know, based on the timesheets, right, and based on his testimony and the email, you could say he's providing credible testimony on top of the fact, what's his advantage to testify, right? He wanted to have a Fifth Amendment protection, gets immunity. Why? Because we didn't even get to the payment yet and what he didn't do or allegedly didn't do, because he admitted something. So talk to us about what the payment was, what the instructions were regarding the payment, what he signed, and he didn't report it, right? So talk to us about those things.
Yeah, so even after Eddie Garcia turned over this thumb drive to Diddy, Diddy wanted more. He wanted Eddie Garcia, he wanted Bill Medrano, and he wanted the security officer, who we know to be Officer Israel Flores, to turn over their IDs to Diddy so that way he could take care of them. And again, by taking care of, Eddie interpreted that to mean financially. And so I thought it was interesting that he had wanted Officer Israel Flores's ID in particular, because if you remember, when Officer Flores was testifying, that he said that Diddy had tried to shove money in his face during the incident and how he didn't accept it. He kind of turned it away. And so even while Eddie was on the stand, he described Officer Flores as kind of a stand-up guy. He wouldn't go for this, he wouldn't do this, but Diddy ended up getting 3 IDs, one being Eddie Garcia's, the other being Bill Medrano's, but then the other third person was a man named Henry Elias, who was the other security guard who had been working at the hotel around this time. So then we see exhibit photos of all 3 men and their ID photos, and then Diddy asked Eddie Garcia to sign an NDA.
Sounds to me like somebody gonna lose their job. That Medrano. Because I think Eddie Garcia, I think he said he's been working security for 13 years. So he still got a job. Well, I don't know after this, but that Medrano dude, shady, shiesty.
Afterwards, and promised that this thumb drive, this particular surveillance video that by now, again, a lot of us have seen, was the one and only copy that was made. So then we see an exhibit photo of the NDA, and it said something along the lines of, because got to paraphrase because it was a pretty lengthy legal document. It says, I represent and warrant that I delivered all evidence giving rise to the surveillance video recording. I represent there are no duplicates, backups, stored drives. I have permanently deleted all texts and other communications. And so Eddie was explaining that he signed this NDA on March 7th of 2016, but another point is that Eddie, who again is around 24 years old around this time, said that he didn't even read the entire document, and he didn't even get a copy of this document even after the fact, after he had signed it. And so we saw another NDA, but this NDA from Combs Enterprise, and it was an agreement on November 6th of 2015. But as the government pointed out, that date was completely wrong because it was supposed to be on March 7th of 2016. But for this particular NDA, it also read something along the lines of, recipient understands that Combs is a highly prominent recording artist and entertainer. Recipient agrees to pay $1 million as liquidated damages if in breach of agreement. And
that's pretty interesting, because I was under the impression that the NDA was the exact one that Eddie had signed. But they brought up something that was a year old. So actually, they didn't bring up the actual NDA that Eddie signed. That's pretty interesting.
What the government did is they try to point out, like Eddie Garcia around this time, again, 24 years old, but also at this time making $10.50 an hour. So how could he come up with $1 million if he was in breach of this agreement? But Eddie did sign this non-disclosure agreement too. He said, kind of similar to the other NDA that he signed, that he didn't read this document either, and said that the reason he didn't read this was because the goal was to get out of there ASAP. And so afterwards, after he signed the NDAs, did he grab the NDAs? He left the room, but then when he returned with a brown paper bag and a money counter. And at first I thought the money counter was like an actual human or a person, but no, it's a machine, because when you're rich, you can just put a bunch of money into a money counter, and it was a lot of money, where Eddie was explaining it was stacks of $1,000 at a time, and in total it was $100,000 that was put in this money counter. And how does he know it was $100,000? He saw the display of the money counter at the end of the money count. And so Eddie Garcia explained that he actually took the extra money, and that Diddy's bodyguard was present during this meeting and present when this money was counted and present for the payment. And Christina Coram was also present during this counting of the money. Again, that being $100,000, a very large stack of money for sure. And after being
Christina is a conspirator, 100%.
handed the money, Eddie said that he got up to leave, and he was escorted out by Diddy and this bodyguard. And Eddie was explaining that he was nervous, but Diddy asked him how he'd spend the money and told him not to make big purchases. And then this was a point that was objected to by the defense. That objection was sustained, but that afterwards Diddy signed his valet ticket. But Eddie interpreted this whole big purchases kind of comment as possibly a way that it wouldn't draw attention if he was to make a large purchase with this money that was in cash. And so that's where the objection was actually. But Eddie said that afterwards he drove off and that he told Bill about the money because, again, Bill Medrano at this point had only requested $50,000, and he got that $50,000. And Eddie got the $30,000. So there's $20,000 left, and that went to the other security guard, that being Henry Elias. And so what did Eddie Garcia do with this money? Well, he said that he bought a used car with it. So he said that he didn't report this cash on his taxes, and I think maybe that kind of played into the immunity deal. But Eddie said that a week or two later that the incident report and the video were missing from the folder, and that Diddy contacted Eddie around Easter saying Happy Easter, God is good, and asked if anyone had inquired about this particular incident. So again, this happened in March, and Diddy, even at Easter, was still thinking about it on his mind, even sending a message to Eddie asking him whether or not someone was asking about what happened. And so Eddie explained that no one had inquired about the incident, and that Diddy ended this call with saying that if Eddie needed anything, that he should let Diddy know. And so Eddie asked something from Diddy a couple years later, or just a year or two later, around 2017, 2018. He couldn't remember the date, but he asked to work for Diddy as far as working with him in security, and he reached out to Diddy through Instagram. However, Diddy didn't reply to this message. And then from Eddie's standpoint, he said he didn't think about the video, think about it, recollect this video, until he saw it on a media outlet, and we presume that media outlet to possibly be CNN or possibly the other outlets, including ourselves, who also released the video right when it was first released. And he said that he later learned of other copies of this video by Officer Israel Flores, and that Eddie Garcia deleted the text message he had with his friend, again, that being Officer Flores, about the incident. He said that he deleted the text messages between him and Henry Elias, the other security guard, and said that he just wanted nothing to do with it. And so he met with the government in June of 2024 after this video was released, after it went public, but he didn't tell the government about deleting the video during their initial meeting. He didn't reveal this piece of information until his second meeting with the government, after he wasn't being represented by the Securitas legal counsel anymore. He got his own attorney, and then that's when he revealed to prosecutors, or federal prosecutors, I should say, just everything that had happened with this particular video.
Oh, I could see why he wanted some protection, right? Deleted messages, didn't report it on his taxes, allegedly lied to police. I mean, that's a problem. That's a problem. But key witness, and it goes to the idea of credibility. Clearly, he doesn't want to testify. Clearly, he's incriminating himself. But, you know, he has that protection to talk about it. Again, goes to, I believe, the bribery allegation, maybe even obstruction, this idea of why it's so important for the racketeering charge. And he mentioned Christina. I've been saying Christina Coram. You say Christina Coram. I'm not in, you know better than me. But I believe she's going to have to testify. She's been talked about so many times during the course of this trial about what her involvement in Sean Combs' operations were, whether or not she was facilitating any of these alleged crimes, whether she was a knowing or unknowing co-conspirator. Again, racketeering conspiracy. He couldn't have just agreed to further a criminal enterprise or further, racketeering activity or a pattern of crimes. He can't do it by himself. He had to have a co-conspirator. Is she the person? Are they saving her for the end? So it's very interesting than he mentioned her. Now, very curious to see what the defense was going to do under cross-examination. I mean, what can they cross him about? What can they question him about? Now, I understand he was questioned. I also understand they didn't ask him a lot of questions, right? What was the focus of the cross-examination of Eddie Garcia by Sean Combs' defense counsel?
Yeah, and to your point, Jesse, the cross-examination went pretty quick. And also to your point, I was wondering where it would go, as I always do with the cross-examination sometimes. But just as far as Brian Steele doing this cross-exam, because he was the one who did it on behalf of the defense, he was asking Eddie just about how Diddy was professional with him during this meeting where there was an exchangement of cash. The defense was saying that Eddie was truthful about getting more money than was requested because, again, Bill Medrano just requested the $50,000. However, Eddie revealed not only to us in the public, but also to the jurors that he took a little bit of cash too, $30,000, even more than Henry Elias went home with when he only went home with $20,000. And so we saw the exhibit of the NDA again. And so then as far as the questioning from the defense, it really kind of touched upon the exclusions from the NDA, which read, a disclosure of confidential information in response to valid order by a court or other government body, or B, as otherwise required by law, will not be a breach of this agreement or a waiver of confidentiality for other purposes. However, that recipient provides prompt prior written notice thereof to company to enable company to seek protective order or otherwise prevent the disclosure. And so then we saw another exhibit, and this was kind of a zoomed in version of the non-disparagement portion of the NDA, where we just kind of saw that you're not to disparage Combs or Combs.
Well, let's leave it there because they're getting into too much legal drama. This witness, I think, just proved the bribery part of the RICO charge. Look at that. Brian Steele grilled Mia. Why didn't he grill Eddie? I mean, you know, it comes to show that the prosecution got themselves a big-time witness understand yesterday with this or I don't know if he's still working in security. I don't know if he'll do after this, but they definitely got the bribery part of the RICO Act. Oh. Let's keep looking into this case, man, and we'll keep reacting to these things that are happening on a daily basis. So I'll get back to you. Maybe I'll have another reaction video later on today. But this is crazy. $100K in a brown paper bag. That's some gangster shit. See you guys on the next video.